starting with you.
Well, I think part of it also is that everything that we're doing in schools is so focused on time.
Yes.
Time just creates this natural stress. So it's like we take time tests. My daughter goes to high school, and it's like you got 56 minutes in class, and then you run to your other class, and you got 6 minutes to get to your other class. And so I think part of that is how likely do you think it is that kids, and at what age, can start to understand the need to stop? It's like that self-awareness piece where, and I used to see kids do this when I taught even fourth grade, where kids would get themselves so stressed out they just couldn't control themselves.
Right.
How do you start to work with kids to have those conversations or teach those techniques? At what age do you think that it can work?
It's an interesting thing because when I actually taught at Hollywood High School myself, I worked with students that had fallen behind on standardized testing. And one thing I noticed in almost all the kids is it wasn't that they weren't smart enough or they weren't competent enough, but they had an inability to focus. So I feel like what we were really doing there was teaching them to focus. Because nowadays, let's face it, kids have so many distractions between the internet and their cell phones and video games and all these different things pulling at their attention, and not to mention just their normal family life and day-to-day living. We have so many things pulling for their attention. So as the teacher, if you can start to teach these students to focus on one thing at a time. So if they're taking a test, you're like, okay, we have this test, we have 50 minutes to take this test. What I want you to do as you're taking it, focus on each question one at a time. Trust whatever answer comes through, don't second guess yourself, and then move on to the next one. Don't be thinking about, oh, should I have answered something else? Don't second guess yourself. So teaching them to focus in that way. But once again, I want to remind the teacher that it begins with them. Their ability to focus and to be present is really where the students will start taking their cues from. Especially for a lot of students nowadays, this might be the first time they're even experiencing something like this. Some of these concepts of being present, focusing on the present moment, having their awareness anchored in the present moment. You tell that to a kid nowadays, they may think that you're crazy. But it does work. Kids, even though they may resist it at first, if you teach them by example and show them the benefit of that, then eventually, if you're consistent enough in what you're doing, you will get them on board. I mean, there's that movie producer, David Lynch, who started a nonprofit where he teaches meditations to students. And it's a very successful program. And also, I just saw recently, I think it was on the Oprah Winfrey Network, where there's an entire town in Ohio where the entire town, for the most part, meditates, including the children. And they were showing all these positive benefits of this. So students are capable of learning this type of awareness, are focusing their attention in the present moment. But you need to show them by example. And I feel like the simplest way you can do that is just by teaching them and showing them and encouraging them to focus on the present moment, focus on whatever the task at hand is. And then that will at least get them started in that direction.
How long of a time period do you think, for example, let's say I'm in a classroom, my kids are getting ready for standardized tests, which is happening right around now anyway.
Right.
And the kids are a little wound up because, in the schools a lot of times, I had this conversation with my students the other night. One of the things that they say is that about 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before the standardized test, the school starts ramping up. They call it full court press, or they call it fourth quarter.
Right.
So it's like the school unintentionally, I think, are starting to stress the kids out.
Sure.
It's like, oh my God, there's this test. Kids start to feel, if I screw up on this test, I'm going to lose my job, or my teacher's going to get fired. They start giving the kids, like, they serve them breakfast and breakfast bars before the test. And I remember, when I was teaching at Fauché, we would give the kids these breakfast bars, and we'd say, okay, it's testing day. And I remember thinking, and I would ask my students, like, aren't you even more stressed out now? Like, do you feel like there's more pressure on you? And they said, yeah, like, I don't understand why. Now we have to get here early, and now is so important to be in school, and now attendance is so important. At the end of the day, how much time do you really need for a kid to be able to sort of, like, get themselves focused and get ready to try to be in that moment? Is it 1 minute? Is it 5 minutes? Is it?
Well, I feel like Maybe it's for some students it might take a little bit longer, but for the most part, if you start establishing a kind of a regular routine, like say for example, it was test taking day, and you're like, okay, you as a teacher, you show up, you say, okay, students, I know this is a big test or whatever, but I don't want you to think about all that. I want you to just for a moment put those thoughts aside, and what I want you to do is I just want you to close your eyes. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Just take 1 or 2 slow, deep breaths. And as you breathe out, I just want you to let all of that go. And then as soon as you do those slow, deep breaths, come back to the classroom, and then you move them forward on the test. Just that simple act of helping them put aside some of those anxious thoughts, some of those stressful thoughts that may be coming from the teachers, that they may be picking up from their parents, that they may be picking up from the administrators. You're helping them and you're guiding them to put that aside temporarily, and you bring them back with the breath. You're not telling them what the breath is. You're just saying like, okay, I just want you to take a deep breath, and as you breathe out, just let all that go. And then you come back to the moment, and then you start the test.
Okay, we've been talking about school and test taking and students. Let's change let's stay within the age bracket, but let's change it up a little bit. Let's say I'm a high school basketball or football coach or softball coach. Because I've got a lot of students out there that, to be honest, are coaches. They're getting their degrees. They're PE folks. They're really trying to focus on becoming better coaches. Where do some of these skills help in improving not only academic but athletic performance?
Well, I feel like one of the best things is when you are playing a sport, for example, since you brought up athletics. If you are able to focus on the present moment, you're going to do better. If you're going to be thinking about the mistake you just made in the game, that's not going to help your performance. So that's one thing. So I believe that Phil Jackson, when he was coaching the Lakers, he brought mindfulness into the locker room. He taught them, to breathe before the games. He also taught visualization too. He had them visualize a positive outcome. He had them focus in a way where they would say like, okay, why are we doing all of this? Because students really want to know, why are we going through all these crazy exercises? Why are we doing this? So you would have, the players, the Lakers, grown men, who have their own way of operating. He would have them put all of that aside. He would have them become aware of their breathing, and then he would have them focus on what we're trying to accomplish here. What's the ideal outcome? He would have them actually visualize that. And then by visualizing that, there's actually been studies that show that the mind doesn't know the difference between something being visualized or something that you're actually experiencing. It still feels the same inside the body. So you can use that power to actually visualize the positive outcome that you're looking for. And as you visualize it, you activate that energy within the students or within the athletes, and you actually start moving them in that direction. So then whatever behaviors they need to excel, to point them, and to achieve that results, they will start moving in that direction.
Interesting. Oh, and to the folks in the other room, can you shoot me a quick thing? Are we out at 58 or 59? The thing that I wanted to touch base on that you were suggesting earlier, which is one of my favorite quotes. You and I are both, thank you, you and I are both baseball fans. And one of the things that I loved hearing once was that the best pitchers have short memories.
Yes.
And it's almost like, and I've heard that in golf, it's like to be a great golfer, forget that last shot. I've also heard in golf them talking about one of the keys to really being successful golfers is to visualize what that next shot is going to look like. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like from an analogy perspective, one of the things that we're talking about is that this isn't about religion. This isn't about being the most spiritual person. It's about really just being aware of what's happening and being in the moment.
Right. And really, it all comes down to what I said at the beginning when I was describing what I do, which is personal development, regardless of what tools you use. It's about aligning you up with your greatest potential.
Okay, so let me ask you one last question,
Sure.
because then I got to transition. Is let's say people wanted to get more information about this. Where can they go?
Well, they can start off, if you would like to learn more about this, you can go to my ZenChill blog website, which is ZenChill Power Tools blog. It's zenchillblog.com. And also, if you want to just find out more about my type of one-on-one work, you can just go to my website, raymondsalas.com. That's SALAS. And also, I do put up inspiring quotes, and I do share resources on my Facebook page, and also my Twitter account, which is under the name ZenChill, ZenChill, which is a lot of what we were talking about today. So.